All right. So, relational life therapy is the therapy that I have trained in for the last year. Even though I've been trained in relationship couples work since 2008, um, I got to this situation where I noticed that I was in a friendship with a guy who was not considering me. And every time I tried to address it with him, he would shame me or give me silent treatment or gaslight me or rage. And I just thought there's so many other clients that I have who are struggling with people who are not able to do conflict resolution. So I guess as I was talking about it with my kids, Facebook obviously listens to all your conversations. And so it started sending me adverts for relational life therapy. So then I had to investigate and see what is relational life therapy about. It's created by a guy called Terry Real. He's somebody who also has ADHD. He's a family systems therapist who has worked with loads of couples. He's an American guy. And with ADHD, you can see a lot more patterns of things that are happening. And he had a lot of influences like Carol Gilligan, which for me really excited me because she was one of the feminist authors that we studied when I did my master's in integral theory. And she has beautiful concepts about women standing up for themselves and finding their voice. And so when I heard that he was influenced by her, I got really excited. And he looks at systems that happen. I'll share a little bit more later on about how some therapy is just individualistic. Of how can you change, like if you're a rager, in some therapists, you may be a rager and they go, no, raging is not okay. Just be very quiet and regulate yourself and be sweet. This Terry Real was like, no, in order to make real change, we actually have to create changes within society. And so he's looking at how do we go from not just individual change, but looking at the family dynamics and then looking at the whole of the education system, really creating third order changes where we're changing who we are and working through a deep transformation that actually changes the fabric of society rather than just individuals shifting in their own homes. These are the core tenets of RLT. Like I was saying earlier, there's a difference between individual therapy where it's just like you see it a lot online at the moment that anytime somebody shares, hey, I'm having difficulty with my partner, and you just see everybody in the comments going, leave him, leave him, leave him. And individualistic therapists, as well as like in a Western culture, it's all about me and I am going to be empowered and take action and do what I like. And RLT is really about relational empowerment. It's saying that wherever you go, you're taking yourself with you. So, how can you do relationships well? How can you shift into knowing how to make a stand in your relationship, but to do it with love? So you are honored and the other person is honored. It's not this individualistic thing where you realize you've been treated badly, so you stand up and you shout and you take it out on somebody because you suddenly have found your voice. Relational life therapy is very much about saying, hey, I matter, you matter, and we are both going to take care of each other as we resolve things. Terry Real believes that intimacy and connectedness is our birthright, that who we are, all of us, is absolutely worthy equally of love. There is no one in the world that is more deserving of love than anybody else. That love is our birthright. And our mission is to heal the to love so that we can come together in cherishing and care and kindness, and that everybody deserves that. His whole mission is to create full, respectful living where everybody is treating everybody on the planet with respect. So even, when I became an RLT therapist, I had to sign a thing saying, I commit to full respect living, where I'm not going to rant online. And that's a bit challenging for me when I see things that are fascist or oppressive, that I really want to like rant and rave. And I have to put myself in this, in a better frame of mind, going, okay, how I write and how I communicate has to be respectful. I can't just rant and rave or insult. Who I have to live with a core being of respect for everybody. And while I generally do that, it's really, there are moments where I can feel myself wanting to rant, and I'm like, is this respectful? Probably not. Maybe don't post it. And so, one of the things that I love about RLT is that all of the faculty are so often saying how they struggle with it on a daily basis. We all are struggling to be human and to live a life that's in connection, and getting triggered in moments, but learning, even if we triggered, to take a breath and pause and check in. Hey, are we being respectful and honoring here? And if not, let me take another breath until I get to a calmer place. And the other thing that is fascinating in RLT is that one of the tenets is that character traits are changeable. So there are a lot of people who go, for instance, narcissism, narcissists cannot change. And I'll look at that a little bit more, but there are many folk who go, if you are being a certain way in a relationship, that's it for life. This is who you are. I just saw somebody in a group earlier saying there are some people who are defects. And I was like, what? This is just, how could you speak like that? In RLT, we believe that everybody can change, but you probably have grown up in a family where you have not got the skills and the capacity to be able to relate in healthy ways. And that's part of what RLT does. One of the core things that Terry, maybe this slide should have been the slide before, but one of the core things that Terry came to see in his own behavior, and this is where the core tenets came out of, because he began to see that in his relationship, he was being pretty narcissistic himself. He was flying around doing weekend workshops or speeches. He was writing books and then leaving his wife with their 2 sons. And then he would sit down and not help, or he wouldn't come home on time. He was really self-centered. And his wife said to him, "You're a narcissist." And it got him to see how men were grandiose and entitled and treated women like they were worthless, even though his wife is an exceptional therapist herself, who works with people in prison who have committed awful crimes against women. She worked with very challenging people and had a very stressful job. But Terry always presented himself as more important, and his needs were more important. And she was a strong woman who just confronted him and said, you're being narcissistic. And it got him to reflect and see, where does this narcissism come from? And because he didn't like being like that, and he didn't want to grow up his kids to repeat that, because he could see the suffering that he was causing. So as he looked at it, he saw that there was a great divide between masculine and feminine, where masculine was seen as strong, independent, and brilliant, grandiose, and more important, whereas feminine was seen as weak. All the sort of caring, empathetic things were seen as insignificant and not as important as the masculine energy. And along that, he saw that there was a dance of contempt from the masculine towards the feminine, where the masculine treated themselves as grandiose and the women as though they should be ashamed, from blaming, an Adam and Eve, or for eating the apple. There was so much shaming of women and a lack of responsibility in men. There was an entitlement and the contempt towards women, but men seeing themselves as grandiose. And as he looked at this, he also saw there was a core collusion where women would protect that status quo. Like, why would women, white women especially, vote Trump in, who sexually abused women, who has said, I grabbed them by the pussy? Why would white women have this core collusion to support these grandiose men who uphold patriarchy? And he said, as he looked at it and he spoke with women, why don't you make a stand? He saw that women protect that status quo of patriarchy out of a fear of anger, of a man just exploding on them, or shaming them, of how dare you speak up, what is wrong with you, you're shameless, or that that the man would just collapse, that they would have a breakdown, that they would go into deep shame, and because they feel attacked, and they would see somebody calling them to account as an assault on their character, and that they would then break down of how unfair it is that the woman is attacking them. And so women live in fear of men spiraling in shame, getting angry and killing them. In the UK, one woman is murdered every 3 days. We're a tiny country, ultimately, in comparison to the rest of the world, but one woman every 3 days is killed. And there is this huge and valid fear of rocking the boat because something could go wrong. So unlike other therapies, RLT is a therapy where we teach women to rock the boat and to support men to deal with that anger, the spiral of shame, and to give them the skills so that they don't break down and they are able to be accountable and repair with the woman that they're with. So let's look at what else is different. So definitely that patriarchy is different. The other thing is about us as therapists or coaches. In RLT, which I absolutely love, and folk who've worked with me before will know that I'm somebody who's very transparent, who shares how messy I am, how much I struggle with life, having had trauma in childhood. At one of the boot camps that I went to with faculty, the woman who's the head of the training program, Relational Life Institute, Desiree, and she stood up and said, hi, I'm Desiree, and in my worst, I've gathered all my husband's clothes and thrown them out the window in the rain. I am not perfect. I'm not standing here because I'm going to preach at you and tell you who to be. I am standing up here because I did this work because I struggled with it and I had to learn the skills to do better. So I'm with you in the learning. So it's very much about transparency, where the whole approach to RLT is we are equals. We are both worthy. I've just studied a few things that I'd like to share with you to make a difference to you. But I'm no worthy or greater than you are. I'm messy too. And so part of it is sharing our stories as we go along, which is so fits my style as a therapist, because I'm always sharing what I struggle with and the things that I've overcome so that I can help other people to overcome that too. The other thing that we do that is different is that we proactively take sides. So if, for example, we have a man who has had an affair, who is an alcoholic, who is being really abusive to the partner, we will say a lot of the relationship struggles that are happening here are because of your behavior. Can I help you to overcome that? Because I know you don't want to be causing this pain. We won't, and a lot of people, where a lot of therapists overly empathize with people who are being abusive and expect the other person to walk on eggshells with them because they're too scared to confront. In RLT, we taught to confront behavior that is unrelational, but in a way that is loving and caring, and saying, hey, I've messed up at times too. And right now, I'd like to be able to support you into coming to health, because then you would feel loved. And I really want that for you. So we absolutely take sides, and which is why we have a lot of people who are in toxic relationships, because we do confront that toxicity and that patriarchy that's causing the issues. So one of the things that we deal with quite a lot is narcissism. In a call that I was on last week, Terry Real said, there's so many theories that narcissists can't be treated. And he said, we eat narcissists for breakfast, lunch, and supper. And that's the reality of it. When I've worked with folk who would be considered narcissists, if they'd gone and got diagnosed, and we take that on and we teach them why their behavior isn't appropriate, why they go into grandiosity and then go into shame to manipulate, and what's happening, and how they're being self-referential, and how the steps to come into health and how to take care of these. And we explain what happened to them to get them to that state, so they can understand and have a bridge towards health. So it's quite exciting to be able to work with this. And this is specifically why I started doing RLT, is because of this. I watched a video of Terry Real talking about narcissism, and I felt so excited because this friend of mine who was taking from me and not caring for me, not considering what I was going through, I just started checking out, going, oh my God, he's gaslighting me. He's invalidating me. He's denying what he's doing. And I wanted to be able to handle this as a therapist in a more effective way, so that it was also easier to handle in friendship. So I'm excited now to have those skills to be able to do it. And then the other shift is that a lot of, and definitely for me, that's what I've done for the last 30 years, is focus on those who have been abused and have a lot of shame and feel worthless and bad about themselves. But on the other side of it is, who is helping the people who are grandiose, the ones who are being abusive, the ones who are not caring. And that has been a failing of a lot of therapy in the world, in that there aren't a lot of people working with grandiose people. So RLT teaches us how to work with grandiose people in a way that they come down from grandiosity and into worthiness, wherever they treat everybody as though people are worthy. And when I'm working with grandiose people, they will be patronizing and rude to me. And now I am amazingly, much more able to deal with it because of these skills, of where I've learned to be able to stand my ground and be strong and relate to them with love and care, rather than with judgment or shaming them. But really caring for them so that they can come from there into a healthier state. So this is the relational grid that Terry Real has created, where I was sharing that he sees things in a really incredible way. So as we're looking at this, you might want to have a look too and see, where do you land? Um, at the top here is grandiose. This is the scale of grandiose to shame. And grandiose people are one up, superior, and having contempt for others. And then on the bottom side of that, underneath it, is one down, feeling worthless, and have contempt for themselves and go, I need other people to love me because I feel so awful about myself. And then from left to right on the grid, on the one hand is walled off. I don't want to talk about any emotions. And I'm giving you silent treatment. It does not feel safe to engage. And then on the other side is boundaryless, where you are unbridled. You want to share everything. You're desperate for love. So if we look at it, where do you feel you are? Are you grandiose and walled off, which would take you into a place where at times you are bypassing any emotions. You just want to be smiley, happy, nice. This is kind of the looking good family, where on social media you look great and you just have to be happy. And if anybody shows any emotion in the family, this is what my family was like. You would be shamed. Nope, you just have to be happy, nice, and sweet in public. And if you're anything else, you're shamed for not being good. And then if anything happens that is harmful or hurtful, there's a lot of gaslighting. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, it didn't happen. And then if people continue to share their emotions, then the person in this area who's grandiose and walled off might get mean or stonewalling, withhold any love, and then do things that are passive aggressive to take out their feelings on others, because they don't own their feelings and they struggle with them, but they'll display them in passive aggressive ways. And down here, staying with the walled off people, when you are walled off, but you feel ashamed or worthless, you go into this resigned place where you are depressed, you feel empty, you feel like, what's the point? Nothing I do is ever good enough, so there's no point in doing anything. And in this place, other people look at you as though you're stonewalling and neglectful because you don't take any action, because you think you are useless and worthless and nothing that you do is ever right. So I'm carrying down here in the shamed half. If you feel worthless, but love dependent and flooding in yourself, desperate for love, you may be needy and manipulate others to get love of, you might be really emotional to try and get love and attention and care and put on a big display to get love. And then when somebody is harmful or hurtful to you, you might try to ignore it and enable it because you desperately want to be loved. And so you'll accept scraps. And you can also be passive aggressive of doing things to, saying, oh, I'm not cooking for you because you didn't cook for me because you don't love me. That sort of thing, where you are saying, you don't care for me and I'm desperate for love. Then at the top, on the top right, these are folk who are grandiose and superior and boundaryless. And so you have this thing of, I need your love and I will control you and dominate you to get it. You will do what I say because that's what I need to feel loved. I will check your phone all the time. I will know where you are. It's a very controlling relationship. And in this, you might flood or shout or be entitled or demanding that people have to love you in a certain way. So this is generally seen as sort of abusive. You can get violent. But ultimately, it's looking down at others, that you can do what you like when you like without any regard for others. And this is where we go on our worst. This isn't who we are all the time. This is just when we get triggered, we go into these places. And what RLT helps you do is to take you from your worst and understand that these behaviors in your worst are not who you are. They are just the defenses that you adapted to in childhood in order to cope with life. This is what you had to do to survive. But now, as an adult, these are maladaptive, but you don't know how to stop them and probably hate that this is happening. And what we do in RLT is help you to get to the healthy middle, where we are helping you to repair, to be vulnerable, to be empathetic, to be authentic, and to take account for your behavior. So it's a beautiful shift into a peaceful, loving, connected relationship where you can notice your needs and your feelings and share them and have them responded to, where folk are not walled off or not flooding. They're not superior and talking down to you, or they're not worthless. They're in the middle where you are worthy and deserving of love and care and goodness. All right. So part of RLT says harmony, disharmony, and repair is absolutely normal in relationship. We are going to, you might have a tense evening where there's harmony, disharmony, and repair countless times in the evening, where in moments you've come in, you are fine, but then something happens that triggers you, and the other person goes, "Oh, sorry, love, I didn't realize this would upset you. Hey, I care about you. Can I make you a cup of tea?" This harmony, disharmony, and repair happens normally in relationships comfortably, easily, and authentically. But often what happens in relationships is that on the arc of the whole relationship, we can get into a concrete state of harmony and disharmony. And some people get stuck in the disharmony and there is no repair. So let's look at the big arc of relationship. In RLT, we say at the start of the relationship, in like the honeymoon phase, there's love without knowledge. You meet somebody, you're just completely in love. You think they are ideal and this is wonderful and everything seems to be so great. You're both proactively caring for each other and it just feels magical. There feels like harmony. Everything feels so great. Then you go into knowledge without love. And this is the normal marital hate, where, which I just love that Terry says, that in relationships, you can go through periods of normal marital hate where you're living so close with somebody that the edges of who they are irk what you feel inside of yourself. You have knowledge of their quirks, their issues, how they respond in their worst. And over time, it grates so much that in moments you can get to a place of not feeling any love for them. You know who they are, you know everything that you hate about them, but you've lost love. And what RLT helps folk to do is to get to a knowing love, where you know who they are and you know how to proactively love yourself and them. And that takes, in the relationship, having capacity to love yourself. And when you get it wrong, take accountability and repair. So unless a relationship can get to the place of learning these skills, the relationship will stay in this normal marital hate, but not be able to recover into a sustainable, knowing love where you both feel so deliciously loved and cherished and cared for. All right, let's look at this next one. So RLT isn't just like it does look at science. It's not just like an iffy thing on, hey, let's just love each other. It is based on science. And one of the things that we ask in RLT often is, what part am I speaking to? And what we look at is there are three parts to who we are that It came from one of Terry Real's mentors, Melody, where she said there's the wounded child, the adaptive child, and she called it the functional adult, but Terry Real calls it the wise adult. The wounded child is where you were hurt and harmed in childhood, and it affected your brain. As you're a little baby and you're looking around, seeing domestic violence or conflict or silent treatment, and that makes you feel unloved, that causes a wounding inside of you. And that affects your nervous system, your brain stem. It affects how you respond to the world, whether you feel safe or you feel hypervigilant and anxious because of the environment you were in. Then the next part of who we are is the adaptive child. And the adaptive child are the defenses that you created. Like we looked at that relational grid of what you do in your worst, how do you cope with life? And then finally is the wise adult, is when you've healed yourself and gone into a place where you can be curious, compassionate, kind, hold multifaceted views. And when you're in either the wounded child, you are scared of relationships because you feel unsafe. And when you're in the adaptive child, you have all these defenses and are struggling in your worst. And so you're wary of relationship or desperate for a relationship, but not utilizing healthy relationship skills. It's only in your wise adult that you want intimacy and you're able to choose differently, so you're not behaving out of your worst. And one of the models of the brain that we use in RLT is the hand model of the brain by Daniel Siegel. And if we look at this, the wounded child is in the hand model of the brain so if we look at just the flat part of my brain of my hand is the nervous system. And the nervous system is what was programmed into us as we were growing through the pregnancy. And as we were around just being born in our childhood, or as we were growing through our childhood, our nervous system was being programmed for how to respond to the world. And the next part in this hand model of the brain, if we imagine that this thumb is the limbic system and the amygdala. The amygdala is the storehouse for your trauma and emotions, and then it releases adrenaline and cortisol that then fire and activate the nervous system that creates this fight, flight, freeze, or fix. And then finally, this little part of the hand model of the brain is your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is the place that you can be rational, compassionate, curious, and kind. This is when this is in action and your brain is integrated and feeling whole. This is the wise adult. When you flip up and you have an amygdala hijack, you respond with all the defenses that you've had from childhood as this adaptive child. And then underneath it reveals this wounded child of where your nervous system is responding with like you've been harmed. So what RLT teaches, I'm just going to press enter there. Other therapies will teach you skills of what to do. But what RLT does is help you when your brain gets triggered and you can't use any of the skills because you're just in this place of reaction. So RLT helps you with the pain that's happened, that's created these defenses. It works with these defenses so that you can calm yourself. And as you calm, you're able to relate in a healthy way. So before we get to any of the skills in RLT, we first help folk to deal with that inner child that is reacting. All right. So these are the phases in RLT. In the first phase, we spend like 3 or 4 sessions just analyzing the data of the relationship, Are there any diagnoses that either of you have that make your relationship more challenging? What is the dance between you? Does one of you pursue the other and the other withdraw? And the more the one person demands, the more the other person hides away and goes still-faced. And the more they get still-faced, the more this person gets anxious and tries to pursue them. We look at what brings you together, that has kept you together in your relationship, and then creating a contract of sharing how long, as a therapist, we expect the work to take, given what the issues that you have. Then phase 2 is the work that we were sharing when I was looking at the hand model of the brain. It's working with the amygdala and getting your body safe to be able to go into phase 3, where we learn the skills. In phase 2, we do inner child work. We work with relational trauma, the trauma that's happened between the two of you that's disconnected you, and what's happened between you and your relationships in childhood. And we do relational mindfulness work, helping you to understand what happens when you go whoosh and your amygdala is hijacked and you can't think. And then in phase 3, we do skills work. And the skills work, we look at all the skills of healthy communication, of how to express yourself in a way that's loving, and how to respond in a way that's empathetic and resolving, how to shift out of having this negative core concept of your partner, and what to do to shift into deep cherishing and treating your relationship like it's sacred and special, so that it's honored and it becomes a safe haven for fueling the rest of your life, so you can grow your goals and dreams together and really create a magical life together. So that's the phases of RLT. And then, so how long does RLT take? Generally, it's considered a short-term couples therapy. Generally, it takes 24 2-hour sessions to first unlearn the defenses of what I showed you on the grid, of where we go on our worst, and then to do the inner child work so that you get used to being able to regulate yourself, and then to be able to grow the skills to love so that you can practice them together. But that doesn't mean in 24 weeks you will magically be transformed. In some ways you will be, for sure. But Terry Real says realistically it takes 3 to 7 years for you to integrate these skills and it be a part of your life and how you relate for wherever you go, in all areas, where you are living a respectful life, respectful of yourself and respectful of others. So while you have 24 sessions, obviously you can do more than that or less, depending on how long it takes you. But knowing, hey, we need to have the patience and grace with each other, that it takes time to integrate these. And Terry has quite a, I don't know, he has a way of working that's like, I know that we can do this fast. Whereas when I did my master's in integral theory, Ken Wilber said it took between 5 and 10 years to grow a stage of development. And that's ultimately what we're doing here, is growing a stage from where we are reactive into where we are responsive and healthy. And it takes practice and care to be able to do that. All right. So for those of you who may be interested in doing sessions with me, there are 3 ways that I work. Well, one, I haven't started yet, but these are 2 ways that I work so far. Currently, I do 2-day couple intensives, and these are accelerated transformation in the 12 hours on a weekend or in the week time. We can book in a month in advance, where we do 12 hours and we do phase 1 and 2. So we work through We gather all the data of your relationship, understand the dynamics, and then we begin to do that inner child work, repairing the relational trauma that you've gone through before so that you're more able to love. And then after that, we can do sessions, either weekly sessions or spread out intensives over like one weekend a month, and do phase 3 where you learn the skills to healthy, secure love. The other way I work is doing couple or family sessions that are 2 hours for everybody to get met, and we can do that once a week or once every 2 weeks, though it's better to do it every week, because if we're just learning the data 1 week and then it takes 2 weeks to start doing the next thing, I would advise that at the start, at least for the first couple of months, that you're doing it weekly. And then as you're growing the skills, you can space them out a bit more to have time to practice the skills between the sessions, and then come back and share what the blocks are. The blocks are exciting to understand, because then we can see what's happened that's needing love in you, or more skills, or breakdown in understanding what needs to happen for you to be able to implement those skills in your life. And then from next year, I'm going to be running boot camps where I will run a weekend workshop for 2 days where folk can come and do the RLT in a weekend. And then afterwards, if you want more support, you're able to do sessions. At the boot camp, I'm getting trained to run boot camps in October. So after October, I'll be able to run boot camps. So probably next year, because it's so late in the year, I'll be running boot camps. So I'm looking forward to that. And if you want to check it out more, you can go to sarialufu.com/RLT, where you can see the intensives. If you're doing an intensive for a couple, it's worth booking a 2-day intensive so we can really process and go through it. Then if you are somebody who is estranged from your family and you're wanting to do RLT, I also do attachment family focused therapy. And I mix attachment family focused therapy with the skills in RLT. In attachment family therapy, I work with the parents first. So if you've got an estranged parent, sometimes I work with the parents. They come to me first, and I work with them to process what trauma they had and unravel and understand what happened in the dynamics with the kids. And I help the parent to understand that as a parent, they're responsible for how they've treated the child and the impact they've had. And then we unravel that and then gain the skills to secure love, empathy, and how to repair. And once the parent has got to a place where they're empathetic towards themselves, and they can take accountability for who they've been as a parent, then and they feel empathy towards the child, then we bring in the adult child. And then I support the child to regulate, to make a stand for themselves and to express their needs, and then help them to love well. It has been astonishingly beautiful to help people to do this, where a few years ago, the clients were estranged from their family, and now to see them close, connected, and loving, it's just one of the most beautiful gifts in the world to be able to do this, especially as somebody who's estranged from my own mum. And when I've gone to therapy with her, it's just been utterly hell. It's beautiful to be able to help parents to learn the skills to do it well. When I went to therapy with my mum, the therapist was telling me that I'm the one who has to care for my mum, that my needs don't matter, and I should just forget all the abuse in the past and just be happy. And there was no acknowledgement or no clearing of the pain of what happened. And so how I work is very different. I help parents to work through the trauma that they had and help them to understand, well, that makes sense that because you had that trauma, no wonder you struggled as a parent in these ways. And this is what it is to be a healthy parent. And I've had to do that with my own kids. I remember when I found a list of 36 ways that parents were abusive. And I said, okay, you count up how many your dad does. You count up how many I did. Their dad had 26 out of the 36, but they said I had 12. I was horrified. I thought I was a great parent. But we wrote down all the ways that they felt I was abusive. And I said, okay, I'm going to work on every one because I never want you to have abuse. And so I worked on those and I went to therapy and I got help so that all of the areas that I was abusive with my kids, I could heal. And at the time, I had complex PTSD. So I can forgive myself, be kind to myself, and understand, yep, that was a reaction to the trauma that I had, but my kids didn't deserve that. So I love helping other parents shift out of abuse into deep connection. Now I have the most loving, connected, caring relationship with my kids who are 20 and 23, who both still live at home. One is now becoming a trauma-informed coach and helping people. He's also training in RLT, and the other one is waiting to hear if she's got into her play therapy masters. So we're all going to do therapy in different ways, and I'm really excited to be able to work with them as adults, helping other people in the world to grow more love. Oh yes, and then in the sessions we weave together love into the past pain and grow the skills to loving. The next thing that I do is brain spotting with RLT. So for folk who've had excessive trauma in their lives, it does take more than 24 sessions. So I need to be upfront with folk about that we can't go into skill building before you've cleared the trauma, because the trauma just makes your brain react. And in order to learn skills, the prefrontal cortex is the place that you learn skills, because that's where you have the capacity to rationalize and think and be regulated, calm, connected. If you are in an emotional distressed state because trauma is triggering you, you're not able to have your brain connected and integrated to learn the skills. So with folk who have trauma, I help them to unshame what happened to them so that they don't feel that they are bad. I help them process the trauma and integrate who they truly are. So they are expanded into the goodness of who they are and what they deserve and what they're worth. And often that takes about 20 sessions of weekly therapy, or doing what I prefer to do now is to do intensives where we do like the whole trauma history in a weekend. So if somebody is in RLT and working with me, instead of then pausing RLT for 20 weeks, we can do a trauma intensive in 2 days where we do 6 hours a day and process the depths of what has happened to them and help them to grow a deep sense of themselves. When I have done trauma intensives, it is just incredible to take somebody in 6 hours in a day from feeling deeply ashamed of themselves to coming out the other side and just being so touched by the self-love that they have by the end of the day. It's utterly beautiful. So I love doing it. And I'm really enjoying doing intensives because I've got autism and ADHD. I love hyperfocusing. So in 6 hours, we can process multiple traumas using brain spotting. I've done 3 or 4 trainings on brain spotting and trauma. So I've got multiple different protocols and setups in brain spotting to help with shame and trauma and abuse and neglect that makes such a difference. And it's just been mind-blowing to be able to see how we can clear trauma from people. So I use that with brain spotting. So when we've done phase 1, where I've understood the data, and then we get into phase 2. And in phase 2, I can use brain spotting with RLT to help process the trauma and that is impacting people and their capacity to love. So that is that. Are there any questions that anybody has? If you want, you can check out my website, and that goes more into RLT and what I do. And I have created a gift for everybody. I'm going to stop the sharing so that folk can ask questions privately without me calling on them as we're talking and their name being in the recording. But for folk who are listening to the replay, I've created a timeout guide. And in the timeout guide, I go through how to do a healthy timeout. So instead of storming out or blowing off, how to walk out in a way that is healthy and honoring, and what you can do in that time out to get regulated, to reconnect with yourself, and then to come back with the mission to resolve and repair and work through things together. So this is a 2-page guide that has 11 steps on what to do in a healthy way to leave, and what to do while you're gone in a timeout, so that you're not being taking out your emotions on somebody else, but you're processing and caring for yourself. So if you go to restoring.love/TS, you'll be able to get the timeout guide to be able to support you in relationship. What one couple has done is printed it out and put it in their kitchen. And so if ever they get tense, they're able to go to the guide and go through it themselves and resolve things in themselves before they come back together. If you are listening to the replay of this and you've got any questions, just send me an email or ask in the form below, and I will get back to you. All right, I'm sending you love.